All right, we are here. We are back with another episode of 91 Reasons, continuing the downward spiral of my voice as Not Scary Farm Halloween Haunt continues. Now, I have had a few days off, but I've not been feeling well. Haunt, if anybody who's ever worked Haunt, it's Not Scary Farm. It's this big annual event we have here in Buena Park where the entirety of Knott's Berry Farm is transformed into a Halloween event. Those of us who work it becomes a lifestyle, and the lifestyle is you don't see your family. All you see are people at Knott's Berry Farm and your bed. So I'm in a cycle of working 13, 14-hour days. I'm sure you've heard this before. So my voice continues to spiral out. But the worst part was I got a sore throat starting about Saturday night, and I wanted to push this episode as far into the week as I could to try to alleviate that. So I'm doing better. Thanks for asking. Thanks for all your cards and letters of an illness you didn't know I had. It's fantastic. But I feel better. I feel fine. And I was up late last night into the wee hours of the morning, which are now to me just regular hours of the morning, of the day, of the work day, watching Chasing Amy, Kevin Smith's third film. And my favorite film that he's done next to Clerks. I'll always be a Clerks fan just because of the raw geekiness and nerdiness and the authenticity of it. Because, like I said in that podcast, if you worked retail, that's your movie. Because nobody ever made a movie about what it was like to be at a dead-end job and having to deal with people who wanted you to care more than you ever could for ringing them up for their stupid little purchases. But Chasing Amy represents Kevin Smith's most adult work. And watching it last night, I was struck by how personal it is and how different it is from his other movies. From the first two, most assuredly. Even though Clerks is anchored by Randall and Dante, it's still a series of misadventures that are just vaguely connected because that's where they work. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a writer, so I decided to start writing. The first thing I wrote was a one-act play called Party Line about three guys who are trying to call somebody and end up with the wires crossed. God, isn't that weird how a concept like the party line, which was such a thing in the 80s. Like if you got stuck on the party line, and the party line meant that there could be 3, 10, 100 people all talking at the same time. And it was just like this magic moment of, oh my God, it's a party line. There's a bunch of people on here. And you talk to all these people. Just scream at it, like trying to make a connection with somebody and you didn't know where they were or who they were. It was really funny. That would never happen today. You know, it was one of the casualties of progress was the party line. But the party line was the first thing I ever really sat down and wrote. And it's weird because when I sat down to write a one-act play, I thought, I'll just write a bunch of action because I won't have to write a bunch of dialogue that way. And it turned out I wrote a play where the three characters remained stationary, and for 25 minutes it was just dialogue. We took it to a festival, and I got some really good reviews. And I think that first experience getting positive reviews on something I had written really encouraged me to keep going. And what I mean by this thread here is the second thing that I wrote, this monster 3-act play that we performed in my senior year of high school, was this massive play called Business as Usual, where it's two guys who run a mortuary, and all these characters keep coming in. And you know what? It shares a lot of ideology with Clerks, because instead of writing multiple scenes using the same characters, my play Business as Usual was the setting stayed the same, the two main characters stayed the same, but somebody would enter, they'd have a funny scene, they would leave, and then somebody else would enter, they'd have a funny scene, and they would leave. And that's what Clerks is, right? And it's also what Mallrats is, even though they make an excursion outside briefly. The location stays the same, and it's just a series of wacky misadventures around a theme of this is the place where we like to go, whether it be a convenience store or a mall. Chasing Amy shows that Kevin Smith is growing as a filmmaker. And you know what? Thank God Mallrats bombed at the box office. Because if Mallrats had been a big hit, then Smith would have probably been stuck in a cookie-cutter filmmaking career of this is the guy that makes the dirty, wacky comedies with all the harsh language. And that's all it would have been. You know, Mallrats would have begat Mallrats 2, you know, the food court strikes back or whatever. But instead, Mallrats bombed. So what did Kevin do? He went back to the drawing board and he said, wait a minute. If I'm going to have a career in film, I got to come up with something personal. And it's strange, like, if you compare it to the trajectory of bigger filmmakers, and there's nobody bigger, arguably, than Steven Spielberg. Spielberg had a monster hit with Jaws and was greenlit to do whatever movie he wanted. Did Close Encounters, which is a stellar movie. You know, it's weird. My mom took me to Close Encounters at the drive-in, and she left. I never saw it complete when I was a kid. She left, and only discovered it later on home video, and like had heard all the years how awful it was and how it didn't make any sense. And oh my gosh, it's a masterpiece of what it could really be like to have aliens visit the Earth. You know, it's Close Encounters is amazing. But look at what happened after Close Encounters. You know, I was too young. I don't know what was going on. I certainly don't know Steven Spielberg. But did he just get cocky? Did he think that anything he made was going to be gold? Because you forget that between Close Encounters and Raiders of the Lost Ark, that he made 1941. And 1941, I tried to watch it just a month ago. I thought, you know what? This can't be as bad as I remembered. I know it's silly, but it can't be as awful. You know what? I turned it off. I was bored to tears. It's too long. It's too boring. There are too many characters. I don't care about them. If you don't buy into the initial conceit of what Los Angeles was like at the height of World War II, then you don't get it. And you know what? I didn't get it. An expensive mess of a movie written by my heroes, Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. It derailed their careers as well. But what Spielberg did, and this is the same thing that Kevin Smith did after Mallrats, is he said, look, to keep my career going, I'm going to have to deliver something personal, something amazing, something great, on budget, under budget, on time, under time. And what we got was, from Steven Spielberg, Raiders of the Lost Ark. A movie made for nothing. Look at the budget of Raiders. I bet it was under $20 million. I don't have the number offhand, but I bet it was under $20 million. And it sure don't look like it. Raiders looks like a really expensive movie. Well done, on location, beautiful sets, fantastic story, everything done right. And it's because 1941 bombed. And because Mallrats bombed, Kevin Smith said, whoa, I can't just make a movie about dick jokes. There's got to be something more to it. And sure, Chasing Amy has plenty of that and plenty of the harsh, coarse language that Smith is famous for. But how Chasing Amy differs from Mallrats and Clerks is that Chasing Amy features three main characters in a variety of locations, and we keep doubling back with these characters again and again and again. So much so that just like any stellar, well-done movie, when another character appears in the scene that's not Holden, Banky, or Alyssa, we know something's up. We're going to get more information, and we better hang on and pay attention. Now, Chasing Amy came out 97, and it was only in a really small handful of theaters. After the debacle of Mallrats, nobody was going to give Kevin Smith a wide release on a movie. So they platformed it out to just a couple of theaters, and as it did really well in those couple of theaters, it blossomed out across the country, in classic independent movie way. And it really is an independent movie, financed for what? Under $300,000. A marvel of low budget, personal filmmaking. And I didn't see it upon its initial release because it didn't play anywhere. It was hard to find, and living in Orange County at the time, to go up to LA to see a movie, I mean, that's a lot of work for an hour and a half movie. So I didn't do it very often. I still don't do it very often. Thankfully, with megaplexes, usually you can find a movie that you want. I'm hoping to find Birdman on Friday, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that it's going to be in only a handful of theaters, and I'm going to wait for the rollout. Now, when they finally did roll out Chasing Amy, it still didn't play near me. So I had to wait till it came out on VHS in 98, the latter part of 98 to see it. Now, it's weird because at the time I was a fan of Clerks, sort of a fan of Mallrats, but we hadn't really created in the fandom the View Askew universe, or the View Askewniverse as it's called, where all these characters are intertwined and it pays to pay attention. So when I put in Chasing Amy, it's just Kevin Smith's third movie. And you know what? There are tons of Clerks and Mallrats references, but you have to really pay attention to get them, because instead of being a wink, wink, hey, aren't we clever making references to other movies, instead, what Chasing Amy is a really touching, personal, ultra, uber 90s love story. And you're just struck by how real it is and how fresh it is. If you travel back in time to when this movie came out in 97 and then in 98 for the VHS, and then it was one of the big DVD purchases I made when I got my DVD player. I got my DVD player in 99. I paid $300 and something for it, and every DVD was $30. And that trend continued for a couple of years. So when I bought Chasing Amy on DVD, and it was just the Laserdisc port over from the Criterion, I think it was like $30-$40. But it was like, okay, Kevin's going to keep making these movies. I'm going to keep buying them, and it's going to be another collection, the Star Wars collection, the Back to the Future trilogy. All my John Hughes movies, Kevin Smith movies are going to be right there. Steven Spielberg, So it was a big deal to purchase that on DVD when, gosh, DVDs were so expensive. But look at the time frame that it came out, 97, and look at what it's talking about. This is the story of Holden and his friend Banky, who draw a comic book called Blunt Man and Chronic, which is this stoner version of Batman and Robin. And they go about their day-to-day business, and they're very successful. And Chasing Amy opens on what might be, I can't think of another instance, the first Comic-Con, comic book convention in a movie. I can't recall ever seeing a comic book convention in a movie before Chasing Amy. And I remember watching it being really excited, like, oh, they're gonna show a part of the culture that's just for me. Because I go to those things. I go to sci-fi conventions. I've been going to them forever. And now it's in a movie. And I know that it's fake. And I know that it looks really cheap. But remember, Chasing Amy was made for pennies. And it gets a pass on all of that, because the very fact that it exists is something to cheer about, and you don't nitpick on the tiny stuff that Kevin Smith couldn't deal with, couldn't work around. This is what you get, right? But it opens and we meet Holden and Banky, who are working on Blunt Man and Chronic, and they have a fan base, and there's Ethan Suplee as their Uber fan. But what's really cool is you get an iconic scene right at the front with Scott Mosier calling Banky a tracer, and that just entered the vernacular of my world forever. You tracer! I'm omitting all the curse words to keep my podcast clean. Thank you very much. But look who he pulls up to get confirmation on what tracing is. Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck's brother, right there in the beginning of the movie. And maybe we should talk then briefly about about Ben Affleck. Now, I wasn't a fan of Affleck in Mallrats. He looks a little doughy, and he's a jerk-off. You're not supposed to like him. But what a difference a couple years can make. And in between Mallrats and Chasing Amy, whatever Affleck did, it worked. Because you watch this movie, and you're struck by, this guy's a movie star. You know, he's got acting chops. He's taking the material uber seriously. It all feels real. And he's lost a little weight. But it's really interesting how good Affleck looks on camera and how well he is in this, how great he is in this movie. Now, at the same time, he's doing Good Will Hunting. So he's just a year away from becoming Oscar winner Ben Affleck for his writing talents. But here he is showcasing that he's a major movie star. And no better indication of that, and with Matt Damon too, because Matt Damon's in the movie too. Like, here's two guys who were bit players in a couple of movies. What was it? School Ties? I don't remember. But bit players in a couple of movies, and then suddenly Affleck's in Chasing Amy, which gives him indie movie credibility, acting credibility, and overnight he's going to be a movie star, a big movie star, because he's going to go from Chasing Amy to Armageddon the next summer. Armageddon, the giant Michael Bay extravaganza movie. Armageddon. Now he's going to have to endure the most cringe-inducing scene of the 90s with the animal crackers, but it's a huge movie that's going to do huge box office. And Matt Damon's not sitting out either, because Matt Damon's going to go from being the guy in one scene of this movie to Good Will Hunting, right, to Saving Private Ryan, where he's Private Ryan. You know, these guys were on a huge trajectory, straight up. And they were friends of Kevin. And Kevin put him in this movie. And, it might be Affleck's finest performance. Now, he's done some great movies. I just saw Gone Girl last week, and he's fantastic in this movie. And this is a guy who was overexposed for years. Forces of Nature, Geely. These are terrible, terrible movies. Reindeer Games. Oh, awful movies. Affleck was the bomb in Phantoms, yo. Well, he might have been, but Phantoms wasn't. But they're in this movie, and they're shining the talents that we know they have in this movie. And Ben Affleck, he owns this movie. He is the center of this movie, right? But he's equally tempered by Jason Lee as Banky, who this is his finest performance. Finest performance, because it plays to his strengths. He still gets to play that ultra dirty, foul-mouthed guy, but you can tell he really loves his friend in this. And when Alyssa Jones, the comic book artist, Idiosyncratic Routine, shows up at the convention and is introduced to Affleck's Holden character, you can see that Banky, he just doesn't get it. He just doesn't understand why they're doing this. Why are you messing with this girl? It doesn't make any sense. We got our thing. She's got her little thing. We're fine. But who shows up as matchmaker? What I would consider, we know that Kevin Smith created Jay and Silent Bob and Dante Hicks, and I love all those guys. But man, Hooper is one of his finest creations. This guy is one of the greatest characters in the Kevin Smith library. Here he is, he's introduced as this Black Panther, Black Power comic book writer of this ridiculous comic called White Hayden Coon. And He in the scene in the movie where they do the comic book panel, he gives maybe the greatest speech of Kevin Smith's writing career, where he talks about how Star Wars is about keeping the black man down. It's unbelievably funny. It's a riff on kind of what I think. Well, who was it? Was it Chris Rock in Boomerang who talks about or is it Martin Lawrence? I can't remember. Who does the talk about how a pool table is about keeping the black man down because the white ball knocks all the other colors and then finally wins by knocking the black ball in. That's a great monologue, but this one's 10 times better because it's about Star Wars, and because he sells it, and because it ends with Banky asking, "What's a Nubian?" Oh my God, absolutely brilliant. And you know what? Scenes like that are what the pause button was made for, because you're probably laughing so hard, you got to pause the movie and then rewind it because you didn't hear anything after that. Fantastic sequence. I was last night I was just struck by how incredibly well written it is, and that goes for about 90% of the movie. There's a couple of things I don't agree with, but 90% of the movie is Kevin Smith, the top of his writing game. You know, the movie has some weird editing and directing choices, but overall, to me, it's his most accomplished work. Because as good as Clerks is, it's not accomplished in the way that Chasing Amy is. It's in color, which is a whole different way of lighting, and the editing is mostly very good. There are some problems here and there, but mostly very good. And it doesn't suffer from the characters react to something we can't see on screen that then is never shown to us, like I talked about last episode, the comic book line in Mallrats. But it's a really good movie. And then the movie just continues to keep getting funnier. The whole Archie and Jughead were lovers sequence is hilarious. And they have to go across the street to get comics, which leaves Holden and Alyssa alone to bond with the dart game. And you know what? As a writer, it's difficult to come up with things for your characters to do so that they're not just talking heads. And the dart scene's really good because we get the dynamic of the darts coming at the screen. They're walking back and forth to retrieve them. People are coming out of the bathroom. It's all very well done. Very well done. It's a little wonky that there's some sort of window that they're looking at to see the couple making out on Banky's car, which is weird because if you've ever been in a real bar, a dive like the one they're in, they don't have big picture windows. But hey, that's fancy editing. It's suspension of disbelief. It's the quickest way to get the scene across, so I'm okay with it. And it's a great way to set up a rapport between these two characters. They're seeing something a little uncomfortable. You know, if you're meeting someone for the first time of the opposite sex, or, you know, if you're gay, someone you're interested in, and the first thing you see is somebody really getting into the act on a hood of a car, it would be a little uncomfortable. But it's played for laughs, and it's very well done. So that when Banky and Holden get back to business and they have the meeting with Matt Damon and Brian O'Halloran, who's playing another Hicks character for whatever reason, Snoochies Boochies. And it's weird, too, because as a guy who spent the late 90s trying to write movie scripts, to have somebody offer you a deal to pay you money for your creation and then not immediately sign the contract was alien to me. It's only now as I get older and I've written 3 novels that I cherish that I would say, look, I need time to think about it too. If you're going to take my life's creation away from me and make it your new creation, I need some time to think about it, and I need to read the fine print. Thank you. But Banky and Holden's life continues. You know, they're writing their comic, and then we get the scene, the turn of the movie where Hooper invites Holden out to a bar called Meow Mix. And boy, if that doesn't just send a red flag up, I don't know what does. But there's a cute scene where Holden is dancing to music that only he can hear, and telling Banky that this girl's crazy for him, and he's going to go in the city. He's going to, as a guy who tried to date in the early 90s, didn't we all have that moment where we got a call and a girl wants us to go somewhere, and yeah, it's going to be an hour drive, but it's worth it because she wants me to go, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to be her guest. So I get all that. And having Banky go and drive, that's really cool too, because it gets him to the club. They get to the club, and it's all played really subtle. And this is where a filmmaker has restraint, because you don't want to turn your hand too quickly. You don't want to reveal it prematurely, right? And Holden gets there. He sees Alyssa in that mesh shirt, and she's dancing. And they have this really fun conversation that just shows that these two really click with each other. You know, she makes a ton of Clerks references about Caitlin Bree. And they talk about Julie Dwyer dying in the pool. So we get Clerks and Mallrats all together. But it's all done quick. So if you're not a View Askew fan, it's just characters having really witty, fun, clickable dialogue. And we, the audience, think, boy, this girl's really into this guy. She's flirting. She's dancing sexy. And what's not to love about her? You know? I know that the making of this movie involved Kevin Smith and Joey Lauren Adams having an affair, you know, having a relationship. And who wouldn't? Like Joey Lauren Adams in the first half hour of this movie she's a geek girl. She likes comic books. She knows how to have a good time. She's at that club dancing, and she's sexy. And it's followed up by they beckon her on stage to sing this Torch song. And I'm telling you, if I'd been in the theater, I can't imagine anybody in the theater, man or woman, not immediately falling in love with this character and this woman and how she's playing her. And Joey Lauren Adams, and my phone is ringing. How about that? I have a house phone that rings once every 6 days, and it decides to ring right now. So I picked it up and hung it back up. I don't care who it is. You guys are more important. And it's usually just people trying to sell me something. But Joey Lauren Adams is the acting equal to Ben Affleck in this movie. And it's weird that she didn't have a mega career after this film. This is a star-making turn. This is a once-in-a-lifetime role for an actress to just grab onto and write it for all it's worth. And Joey Lauren Adams does. She's fantastic in this movie. She's lovable. She's sexy. Her song just melts your heart, right? And it's weird because you are right there with Holden. When he's staring at her singing, you just know everything he's thinking, and you're with him on it. You're totally with him on it. And then there's a little weird moment where this little blonde comes breaking through Holden and Banky, and she's bopping, and you think, well, you know, it's a pretty girl. I would have put her front and center. Now, I didn't know at the time that it's Jason Lee's wife, but she's right there, and she's bopping to the music, you know. You ever seen the Simpsons episode where Homer goes on tour with is it Hullabaloo, the fake Lotsapalooza? And when Sonic Youth is playing, they just cut to the teenagers dancing, da-da-da. And Bart and Lisa have this conversation about how making teenagers depressed is fish in a barrel. She just has that bopping, like, oh, this is how I dance to music, you know, and you don't think anything of it. Except that she's into it as much as everybody else is, and you're with it too. And then she comes, you know, Alyssa beckons with a finger, and oh my, isn't that what every guy wants? That moment of we're done flirting. It's time to just go for it, and it shows in a weird '90s turn that Alyssa is the aggressor, and she's beckoning to Banky, and she runs, and then bam, she starts making out with the blonde, and the submarine ooga goes off, and Banky looks around and he's confused, and then they start showing all the lesbian couples in the bar. Everybody's hanging out, making out. There's some butch ones, some lipstick ones, and it's a gay bar. And then he has a moment, and then it's very funny acting on Jason Lee's part. And Affleck just looks like he's going to be sick. We, the audience, are like, oh my God. Now, it's one of those things where the trailer gave it away. But if you saw this movie blind and didn't know she was gay, and they reveal it at that moment, wow, what a turn. Bing! She's gay! And Holden has no chance with her. She's gay, and that's it. It's over, isn't it? Not so fast. Because instead of him hightailing it out of there, they are forced to go across the street to a bar again. And I it's never really clear if where they're sitting is the Meow Mix bar still or somewhere. I don't know. It does. I would assume it's the same bar. I don't know. But I do know that the scene is a really fun homage to Jaws, where Banky and Alyssa are showing off their sexual scars from injuries. And watch Affleck in the scene. He gets more and more disgusted as the minutes go by. And again, as a guy, haven't we all had that moment of, wow, I really like this chick? And the most common occurrence would be, oh, she got a boyfriend. Oh, she's married. So anything that she did cute suddenly is like, oh, well, I don't care because she's off the market. I don't care. I'm not going to look at her. It's weird because I have this this history with my wife, in that when I met my wife, she was married to someone else. And even though she was flirting with me hardcore, I don't even remember much of the first time I met her, because I had that switch where somebody said, oh, she's married. And I just switched off. She's not available. It's not an option. So I shouldn't even bother with this. Now, she pursued me and actually left her husband for me. How about that, huh? I was a guy who couldn't get a date in high school. And as I got older in my 20s, my wife left her husband for me. I would never have predicted that. And I never would have encouraged it, because that's not who I am. She got a boyfriend? Oh, I'm good, thanks. She's got a husband? Oh, I'm really good, thanks. And in Chasing Amy, it's, oh, she's gay? Well, that's it. Done. And Holden in that scene is done. So they got to go back to the city. Back to New Jersey, out of the city. And eventually, Holden realizes that even though she's gay, he still likes her. So they start hanging out. And there's a really fun montage of them hanging out and having fun. And it's a really interesting, because I don't think Kevin Smith, he doesn't use montages really. But it does cement in movie shorthand that these two are into each other. And Alyssa's into Holden, even though it's clear she is about women in this movie. She's about women. So they go to the park. And there's a great scene on the swings where you can tell it's weird. And yet, I don't know if you have to be a guy to understand this. But in the scene in the park, the realism to me is that you can tell that Holden knows he has no shot with this girl. So suddenly all the barriers that are there when you're trying to get a girl to like you are gone. And he can talk to her any way that he wants. So he asks her questions that he would never ask someone he was trying to date. Sexual prowess, that sort of thing. How does it work? I don't understand. And he's kind of flippant about it. And it's an interesting scene, and it's played really well, because when you're interested in someone, you're on your best behavior for the most part. And here's a guy with his guard down. He doesn't care. He has no pony in this race, because it ain't going to happen. So why? Who cares? And they come out of that scene with a real respect for each other because they've been, for the first time, completely honest. And they talk about what sex means, and it's interesting. Like, that's a really amazing, really well-written scene. And it's so weird because Smith is so used to doing easy jokes, you know. Anybody see any balls down there? About the biggest pair you ever seen, Dingleberry? Like, easy. Okay, right off the bat. Dun, 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 dun. And then suddenly, whoa. The subtext, the undercurrent of this scene is amazing. What a great scene in this movie. And it's not the best scene in the movie, because those are coming up. Because we get that great montage when Banky, who in the train station has to show his porno books to a kid. Like, it's another weird, like, I don't know if that's Jason Lee putting that in or Kevin, like, pigeonholing him into this character. I don't know, but it's in there. And it's, you know, I don't get that stuff. But we get that montage of them being alone as friends together and the relationship cementing. But it's weird because for 90% of this movie, 99% of this movie, we only get Holden's point of view. So we're seeing the world through Holden's eyes. And we, the audience, like Holden, are in love with Alyssa Jones because she's presented to us as amazing. And she has no flaws. And she's brave and out there and funny. And what's sexier than a woman who's smiling and having a good time? You know, you ladies think it's about clothing and makeup and the right shoes and whatever. But ask any guy. There's nothing sexier than a woman having a good time. You know, we don't want to be with someone who's always upset, always looking for, if there's two ways, the wrong way to take something. Sexy is, I'm smiling, I'm happy to be with you. It doesn't matter where we go or what we do or where we eat dinner. We're just together, and that's fun. I mean, that's what guys find sexy. And Alyssa Jones is all of that. You know, she's like one of the guys because they're layering this lesbian subtext, you know, this lesbian character gloss on her. She's one of the guys. But guess what? She ain't. And we get a scene later that might be the best scene of the movie. But we're not there yet. Because first, we have to have maybe the second best scene in the movie. And that's where Holden confesses his love for her. And it's done so well. They're driving, they're laughing, and he just says it. I'm in love with you. You know? You ever seen The Office? You ever seen when Jim confesses his love for Pam? It's the same scene. They're laughing, they're having a good time, and then bam! I love you. And even though women say they want this in their lives, I can't recall a single movie where it's been a guy, I love you, and the girl wraps her arms around his neck immediately and starts kissing him. It's always, no, no, no! In The Office, Pam is engaged. In Chasing Amy, she's gay. In Attack of the Clones, she's a senator. Whatever the hell that means. So she sits quietly and listens while he unravels this amazing, like, he's got a knife and he's opening his chest, he's ripping his heart out, and he's laying it right there for her in every kind of uncertain, blank, stark terms he can imagine. I love you in every way that a man can love a woman. I love who you are and what you make me when we're together. Like, Holden just nails it. And how Kevin Smith found this in himself and then put it on paper is astounding because it's so raw. It's so good. It's what everybody wants to say to that girl. And her response, she gets out of the car, starts walking in the rain. He goes and he follows her, and she just lets him have it. Like, who the hell are you to tell me this? And basically what she's saying is, this is your burden. This is not my burden. You decided to give this. You could have kept this. You're selfish because you decided to give it to me too. I don't want to hear it. And it's weird because you think that we're building towards that they're going to immediately start a relationship, right? But how often does that happen? She lets him have it, you know? And even while she's screaming at him, she's cute. It's Joey Lauren Adams. And then she storms off into the rain, and she comes back, and they have this amazing, real, honest kiss. And it's passionate, and it's shocking because she just said, you know, you got a crush, and I'm supposed to change everything about myself. You know, for you, this is business as usual, and for me, this is an uprooting of everything that I am. And wow, what an emotional wallop it packs, you know. I was watching it last night, and I was tearing up because it's so real and so fraught with emotion. And that's why we go to the movies, whether it's exhilaration or happiness or whatever emotion you're looking for in your movie. When it finally, you know, the combination dial lock finally turns and the vault opens and it spills out in whatever you're looking for, it's a rush. And in Chasing Amy, the first real rush is that scene in the rain. Bam! He loves her. We can't do this. And then they're together. And it is the centerpiece of the movie, that sequence. Really, really good. Because we know it's not gonna work out, you know, because it's a movie. These things rarely work out in the movies, you know. A lot of times they do, but this one's complicated. This one's really complicated. And think about for a moment what Kevin Smith is saying about 90s culture. Because to me, the 90s were started off cultural, significantly wise. 1992, when Howard Stern debuted in Los Angeles radio. Now, whether you're a Stern fan or not, and I'm a big Stern fan, or at least I was until I stopped paying for Sirius Radio. The guy takes more vacations than Clark Griswold. But anyways, think about 90s culture and how, like him or love him or hate him or whatever, Howard Stern really brought the idea of the lesbian into pop culture. There was not a lot of lesbian stuff until Howard Stern came around. Because until that point, lesbians were always shown as rather mannish. They hated men. Look at not the hating men part, but the mannish part. Look at was it The World According to Garp? You know, look at movies where lesbian women are portrayed, and for the most part, leading up to the 90s, there are no beautiful lipstick lesbians or even this is going to sound terrible, complicated lesbians where maybe there's more than just their sexuality. And aren't we a combination of everything? Likes and hates and loves and not just our sexuality. And when you boil somebody down to just their sexuality, you're pigeonholing them in a way that's completely unfair. But lesbians were not part of culture, you know. When I was a young boy growing up, the ideal woman was Heather Thomas in that pink bikini in the jacuzzi from The Fall Guy. And how do I say that the way that I'm looking at that poster right now? That's the first poster I ever bought at Zodi's, and it took a lot of guts to beg my mom for it. There were no posters of two girls. The idea of a menage a trois was not anything in the geek library of want in the 80s. And it wasn't until the 90s that it was like, oh, it's not enough to want the hot blonde and the Ferrari in the Spencer Gifts poster. You're supposed to now want two girls because we're seeing the emergence of, and you know what? This is a word that is never even mentioned in Chasing Amy. The word bisexual is never mentioned in this movie, even though it's a movie, the first movie I can even remember that's about a bisexual person. You know, I'd seen movies about gays before. Never had a problem. And I'm not talking about the flamboyant Hollywood in Mannequin, or the equally lame guy in The Rock who's cut. I just want to, are you okay with your haircut? You know what I'm talking about. But I watched My Beautiful Laundrette, Daniel Day-Lewis, Prick Up Your Ears, Gary Oldman. These are real movies about real people where they just happen to be gay. And suddenly in the 90s, bisexual women were the thing. It was every guy's thing. Is I need not only do I need a girlfriend, but I need a girlfriend who has a girlfriend. And what a lot of pressure that was. Do you know how hard it is to get a woman in bed? And now you want me to get two? Are you crazy? That's a lot of work. But Howard Stern brought it to the forefront. And then Kevin Smith just sort of, I don't know if he picked up on it or if it was his own thing, but he's going to make this movie about sexual relations and how we view things. Because eventually I keep saying Banky, Holden and Alyssa get together. And we don't even see the sex scene. There's no sex scene in this movie. Other than the makeout scene at the club, it's not a movie about sex. It's a movie about sexuality, which is completely different. So when Banky comes to work the next day, we see the aftermath. We see the place is tore up. The couch is on its side. It's a mess. And there they are together. And she's wearing boxers. And something happened. And the scene they have afterwards is a really touching scene between two friends where he says, this is not going to end well. And Holden says, look, I'm not going to let, she's not going to come, but, it's not going to be a thing. He says, look, I don't want 20 years of what we've been building here to be for nothing. And Holden says, I'm not going to let her affect the comic. And he says, I wasn't talking about the comic. That's a great scene. It echoes one of my favorite scenes in Mermaids where Bob Hoskins and Cher are arguing. And he says, what about us? What about us? And she says, no, Lou, you are you and me and the girls are us. When did you and my girls become us? And he says, I wasn't talking about the girls. I was talking about you and me. He says, I've never wanted to hit a woman more than what I'd feel right now. Human, real emotion. That's what movies are about. And look, Chasing Amy is 17 years old. And Mermaids is 24 years old. And they stick with me like I just saw them yesterday. And in the case of Chasing Amy, I did. But when the movies echo and resonate like this, they stay with you. And we know it's not going to end well. Banky's just saying what the audience is saying. So now Holden and Alyssa have a relationship and everything seems fine. Is this how the movie's going to end? And then we're treated to, again, what I think is the most poignant, interesting scene of the whole movie. And that's when, remember what I said about, this movie's about three characters. And when somebody else appears in the movie, it's time to pay attention because something is going to happen. And this is it. Alyssa is having comic book shipment night with all her friends. And they're helping her bag and board and get the comics ready to ship out. And they're just talking about this and that. And Alyssa confesses she's in love. She's in love with this person. And she uses the pronouns they. She never says he or she. And when she finally admits it's a guy, look at the reaction she gets. And the woman raises her wine glass and goes, there goes another good one. Meaning she's no longer allowed to be gay. And it says that the lesbian side of Alyssa's life is judging her just as harshly as the heterosexual side. And it gives Alyssa so much depth in that scene. Because now she has nobody but Holden in her life. And here's a girl who flitted around from relationship to relationship, slept with whoever she wanted to, did whatever she wanted. And now all her friends are shunning her for what? Because she picked the wrong gender. Oh, does that scene just hit you? like right in your heart, like a ton of bricks. Bang! You mean Alyssa's not this fun, carefree sex goddess? She's actually a well-rounded person of depth and feelings and emotion. And we just love her more for it because now we want to protect her. Now we know that all she has is Holden. And what does Holden get? Holden gets an education from Banky on what Alyssa did in high school and all the sexual escapades she had, and the main one being her high school nickname in the yearbook, Finger Cuffs. And we get this weird sort of rap music scene in front of the quick stop where somebody explains that Finger Cuffs means she was with 2 Men at one time, one of them being Rick Darris, the same guy who was with Caitlin Bree in Clerks. And everything is circling up and getting worse. And, you know, instead of the adult thing to do, which would be to say, everybody has a past. And who you were in your past is what makes you who you are today. You wouldn't be the same person you were if you hadn't gone through all of that, good and bad. If I hadn't grown up with drunks and Don Berg, torturing me in every moment, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I don't thank him for that, but I understand it. And all Holden has to do is say to Banky, whatever. Who cares what she did yesterday? Because today she's with me. But he can't do it. He can't do it because he's young and inexperienced. And it's not till you hit 30, I guess, that you just, who cares what you did earlier? Who cares who you were with? But I'm talking about the heterosexual history question. You know? Shouldn't ask. You shouldn't ask who your partner has been with. If they want to tell you, they'll tell you. And he didn't ask. It was given to him. But you know he's going to ask because he doesn't believe it. And we, the audience, don't want to believe it because we, the audience, like Holden, were led to believe that Alyssa had never been with a man because when she's talking with Banky in the Jaws homage scene, she's only talking about girls in her high school life. So Holden feels special. Like he's the only guy she's been with. He is finding new ground. And Hooper says it succinctly in the record store scene. And real quick, doesn't it suck that we can't have record store scenes anymore unless they're hipsters looking for the old stuff on vinyl? It's not quite the same if you're talking to your friend while scrolling through iTunes. Damn, I missed the record store scene. And the record store movie, Empire Records, High Fidelity. They're all gone. It's antiques now. Video stores, Be Kind, Rewind, Clerks. What a bummer. But we wanted to believe, like Holden, that it was his charm and her feelings for him that somehow broke her gay barrier so she could become straight. But that's so simplistic, isn't it? Isn't that just stupid? Aren't people way more complicated than that? And we get the scene at the hockey rink. And, you know, again, I keep doing real quicks, but that's what movies are about. I don't get the hockey thing. I know it's an East Coast thing. It doesn't snow in California. So if you want hockey, or even, you know, if you want hockey, you got to go to the rink. There's never going to be a time where you can play hockey. Even on, like, no, I don't know anybody that even plays hockey with rollerblades. Like, hockey's not my thing. I get that it's Kevin's thing with the hockey jersey and the constant hockey references. And when we get to Dogma, the hockey players that work for Satan. I don't know. I don't know what it is, or I don't know. But we get the hockey scene, and look how skillful and fun it is, where they're watching the game, and as Holden's questions and grilling to her get worse and worse, so does the hockey game of, and you don't really, if you're watching it for the first time, you don't really get it until the knockout punch at the end. But subtly, we're getting two fights of the same ilk. And we know it's not going to end well. And it doesn't end well with her storming out after he's grilled her in front of all those people. But there is a fun little bump because who's sitting next to him? Rick Darris from Clerks is sitting next to them. Hello. But then outside we get another really good scene. And this is Joey Lauren Adams' tour de force, because just like Affleck had the flip side of I love you, she gets the flip side of I love you for other reasons, Holden. And she's just mercilessly pummeling him with how much she cares about him. And in a big Hollywood production movie, and you know they made one of these for general audiences, Three of Hearts, with one of the Baldwins and Sherilyn Fenn. And was it Sherilyn Fenn? I think it was Sherilyn Fenn. Or was it Lara Flynn Boyle? Or maybe it was both of them. I don't know. God, remember Sherilyn Fenn? God, Sherilyn Fenn was the go-to girl, man. Late 80s, early 90s, softcore, Skinamax movies. Sherilyn Fenn, man. Beautiful girl. Although more women rented Two Moon Junction at my video store than men, because it had Richard Tyson in it. Richard Tyson. Where's that guy now? Anywho, in a Hollywood movie, this scene would have ended with them getting together. And instead, it ends with Holden walking away. He just can't take it. You know, the Hollywood movie would have had him getting together one scene later. But he can't take it. And it's such a... this is going to sound terrible, too. It's such a young man's problem, like I said earlier. You know, sexual history, once you hit 30, 35, it means nothing. You love a person, not what they used to be or used to do, and who with whoever. And Alyssa lays out her whole sexual history in that sequence to him, and his response is to just walk away from her and leave her. And the scene ends with her banging her fists against a car and crying. And oh man, it's so heartbreaking, because we know she has nothing else. All her gay friends have ostracized her, and now Holden is turning her away. Man, does it suck. And you know, as you get to the end of the movie and the finale scene, and I have to admit, when I first saw it, I thought it was silly, because Holden's solution is he gets Banky in a room, he gets Alyssa in the same room, and he lays out his problems, and the solution is they all need to sleep together so that they can have this weird sexual encounter that somehow gives Holden all the experience that Alyssa has in one sitting, and he thinks Banky is in love with him, so this can get Banky's feelings straight on the matter. Like, when I first saw it, I thought it was simplistic and silly. You know, and it probably stems from the fact that I'm not attracted to men, and I have no desire to sleep with another man. I just don't have that. You know, whatever people want to do is fine with me. You know, some people like to go to Taco Bell, but I don't. And some people guys like to sleep with men, but I don't. It's just not my thing. But I didn't get the scene initially, but I watched again last night, and I really, really watched it. And I think it plays beautifully. And it does in Holden's mind seems rational. And so that you know, the audience, so that you know he's not bluffing, he actually does kiss Banky in the scene. And he tells him deal with it. And it's played for laughs. But there's a moment that's the moment in there where Kevin Smith is letting you, the audience member, know that Holden is not bluffing on this. He really means this. And Banky, his reaction is, he really means this. You know, he's the audience proxy at this point. He means this. And Alyssa she's so disappointed, because she knows that he means it. And for her, it's a different thing. Banky's terrified. And Alyssa is just disappointed in Holden. Banky agrees to it. And in that moment, seals his friendship in a way with Holden that nothing will matter. I mean, this is the equivalent of a guy saying, yeah, I'm going to give you bone marrow to save your life. It's not the same, but it's really close, especially in Banky's eyes. If this is what my friend needs to get on with his life, and we're going to go back to our comics and the way things were, I will do this. And I mean, that's what a true friend does. So when Alyssa says, I'm not doing it, he's relieved because he was going to do it. And Alyssa just stands and delivers a really touching speech. And she tells Holden, you don't need this. I don't need it anymore. And if it is something you truly need, I'm not your girl. I love you. I only want to be with you. I spent all those years sleeping around and doing all that crazy stuff because I was looking for what is right here in front of me. And Holden realizes, oh my God, I've made a terrible mistake. But it's too late. And then she smacks him and says, I'm not your whore. And it just sort of ends there. And it's really well done. Really touching. And it has weight. The scene has weight. It's the climax of the movie. Because afterwards we're just getting the pickup pieces. And the pickup pieces are just as good as the rest of the movie in a really short amount of time. And this is what good films are supposed to do. They're supposed to get to it in as quick amount of time as possible and move on. Don't dwell on it. The movies that dwell on it, that's the reason you don't like them, because they're treating you stupid. And in a very quick, broad stroke, we are back to the comic book convention where it all began. And yes, some of the people are still wearing their Borg costumes, but that's what people do. I've seen the same guy dressed as Dragon Ball Z Homer at Comic-Con for the last decade. And the same guy dressed as Chef with Jar Jar Binks' head on a platter for the same amount of years. So the Borg costumes don't bother me. But we get that we see very quickly that Banky has a new comic called Baby Dave. Alyssa's got a new girlfriend. It's Kevin Smith's sister. We saw her in Clerks, and she's back. And we see that there's Holden. And with the collapse of Blunt Man and Chronic, he's actually made something worth reading that's not just stoner nonsense. It's actually personal and, again, has weight. And look at Alyssa's face, man. She is struck by it, and she cannot wait to read it. And even though her girlfriend comes back, who was that guy? Just someone I used to know. You can tell in that look, she's going to read that comic. This is just me, the audience member. She's going to read that comic, and maybe there's still something there. Maybe they can find love again, these two, because they need each other. They are for each other. And didn't they go through a change? Isn't that what great movies do? Show you a character go through a change? Holden saw the error of his ways. He grew the hell up, not only in his professional life, but his personal life as well. Damn, that's good filmmaking. Really good filmmaking. And another side note, haven't we all had that moment? With me, it's usually when I'm reading a really good book. Example, I've read the Golden Compass trilogy, his Dark Materials trilogy, 5 or 6 times. And there's a scene near the end where after the two main characters have virtually saved the universe and reestablished God on his throne in heaven, it's a little weighty. They realize they can't be together because the very notion of them being together violates the laws of the known universe. So they have to go back to their own respective universes where each one has the same bench in Oxford, and they say that they're going to sit on the same bench at the same time and think about each other in different universes. I cry like a baby every time I read it because it's so darn touching. And I look around and my family's eating dinner, watching TV, playing video games, and nobody cares. And I'm the only one who had that moment. And Alyssa had that moment while her girlfriend went to get water. Who was that guy? Just someone I used to know. But that's not what she means. What she means is that's the only guy I ever loved. And he just left. Oh, good filmmaking. Chasing Amy is a fantastic movie. Yes, it was made cheap. Yes, some of it looks wonky. The Criterion DVD I watched last night has lint on the film. Give me a break. Clean that sucker up for Blu-ray, please. But it's a good movie, warts and all. A fantastically well done effort by Kevin Smith on a shoestring budget designed to prove not to Hollywood, but to himself that he can make a movie worth watching on time, under budget, for no money at all. After doing it the studio's way, he's going to do it his way. You know what? I'm applauding. God bless you, Mr. Kevin Smith. Chasing Amy's a masterpiece. It is your masterpiece. We'll get to the other movies eventually. Dogma, Strike Back, Clerks 2, which is really good. Jersey Girl, which is not so much. But, Red State, Tusk, whatever. Cop Out. Ooh, Cop Out is terrible. Cop Out's one of those movies on a list that I just turned off. Like I couldn't watch. There's a bunch of them. I'll list a few right now just so you know. And if you don't want to listen to 91 Reasons because of these reasons, I get it. Anchorman. Oh, God, I turned it off. It was so dumb. Not my movie. Awful movie. Didn't care how it turned out. What else? What did I just say? I didn't turn off Jersey Girl, but I wanted to. You know what? I'm too on to Chasing Amy for that list right now. I apologize. I will put that list on Facebook. But there are a bunch of movies that I just, because there aren't enough hours in the day in my life, I can't watch some movies. I just turn them off. I don't like it. Usually they're Adam Sandler, Drew Barrymore, or Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. The exception being, of course, Mr. Deeds, because it stars Winona Ryder. And I'm working on that Winona Ryder episode in my head, because you all think I'm a Leah Thompson guy, and I was briefly, but I've always been a Winona Ryder person. Oh my God. She's the one celebrity I can't get close to. Never had the opportunity. Got really close one time. Alien Resurrection. Anywho, Chasing Amy is a fantastic movie. I really enjoyed watching it again. It's a movie I would watch many more times and will over the course of my lifetime. It has a lot to say about sexual politics in the 90s, sexual politics today, being pigeonholed into one, making a choice, one choice. You're an Elvis or a Beatles fan. I don't know. You can't like both? No. Tarantino says you can only like one or the other. You can only like boys or girls. You can't be bisexual? No. What if I am? Well, then you're weird. That's not right. And that's not the way humans are. We're complicated. And Chasing Amy's a complicated, really well done movie about and it never strays from what Kevin Smith has promised to deliver us, and that's comic books, dirty sex talk, stoner jokes. I didn't even talk about the Jay and Silent Bob reveal scene. They don't even show up till the end in one scene to explain the title of Chasing Amy. And Kevin Smith, as Silent Bob, returns to giving the pivotal speech of the movie like he did in Clerks. And that's fantastic, and that scene's great, and it is fun to have Silent Bob finally tell Jay to shut up. Yak, 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 yap, 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 yap. What you don't know about me could fill the Grand Canyon, After watching Mallrats and, finding a little here to like, a little here and there, I found buckets to like in Chasing Amy, and you will too. And you've already seen it. If you're listening to this podcast, you've already seen it, and we're just talking about it. And that's what we do here on 91 Reasons. We're not the movie of a week podcast, like I've always said. We're not the what came out. I could have done Gone Girl, but I haven't had chance to watch it 10 times and digest it. That's not how I operate. I operate a little differently here, as you can tell. Well, I am over the hour mark on a single movie, which is the hallmark of what I like to do. So I gotta finish up here because I'm losing my voice again. Thanks for listening. As always, I am Jeff Tucker, the host of 91 Reasons. I have a great Facebook page where we put a lot of supplemental material to the episode. So please find us on Facebook and like us. Please subscribe on iTunes. That's the only way to further the show. We're a podcast with no ads as of yet. I'm fully financed by myself, so I appreciate all the great reviews on iTunes, because at this point, that's all I'm doing it for, is to hear how people like it. And I truly enjoy reading the reviews and what people have to say, even if they're like Adrian Romo, who flipped off his radio because of my Mallrats comments. And the irony is I reviewed the movie on a disc that he bought me, so it was his right to flip off the camera or the radio. But we'll be back with another episode next week about, I don't know if it'll be about Dogma. It might be about something else. I do these series, and I know I'm overdue for my third Batman, and I'm overdue for Revenge of the Sith. So we will get to those, you know? We will get to them in time. I'm also, again, working on a really fun Halloween episode where I will talk about something that really happened to me. And also have another episode coming up about my father and how he was murdered and what it means to get that news, which is not good, even if you didn't really know him. But, wow, we're spiraling downward here. You know what? It's Haunt, man. I'm exhausted. Haunt's a killer. It's only going to get worse. Next week, Haunt begins on a Wednesday, so I don't get that third extra day of rest. I've gotten a bonus day. I won't get that. So I may end up sounding like Red from the Tube Bar. The name is Red. But hey, you never know. The worse I sound, the better the podcast sounds, because I get that Doug Barnes radio voice of season pass. See, I can't even do it. Maybe I'll be able to do it next week. I'm just rambling. But thanks for listening. And if you want to support the show, like I said, do all those things with Facebook and iTunes. I am also the author of 3 books, The Lost Station, The Sixth Key, and my newest book, The Infinite Backward, all available on Amazon.com as either a beautiful paperback or as a Kindle download for only 99 cents. Hey, if you're in the movie industry and you like what I have to say and you think my movie stuff is interesting, I have written at least a dozen movie scripts when I was trying to be a screenwriter. And I think they're great because I won't settle for inconsistencies the way a lot of big studio pictures somehow let slip through the cracks. So if you want to hear about those, send me an email. I'm also going to do a podcast where I go through the plots of some of those just because I think it's fun. And I can talk about how the first script I ever wrote was turned into a movie that didn't give me a dime, and I felt really weird watching it in the theater. Or how my high school play that I talked about, where the two brothers owned a mortuary, was turned into a low-budget movie that I didn't get a dime for. So, you know, there's a lot of coincidences in Hollywood and a lot of times where ideas are stolen. And we just saw that this week with Saturday Night Live and the Tina Turner sketch, right? Who knows? I don't know. I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just saying that I'm a guy who likes to talk and a guy who likes to write, and I do plenty of both. And if you want to read some cool movie scripts, let me know. This is 91 Reasons.